Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Monsters. Today we have Kyleigh here with us from Colorado, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell me, is there room for me to cry? Is the devil all inside my mind? I don't wanna die like this, I wanna live my life.
Hi, Kyleigh. Welcome.
Hi, Shell. Thank you.
I'm glad you came.
Yeah, it's been a 16-hour drive, but gonna be worth
Wow.
it. Yep.
Wow. Gosh, you guys drove. Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
All right. Well, the floor is yours. You can start wherever you're comfortable. Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Eastern Iowa in a small town called Clinton. I lived there roughly till I was 17 years old or so. I was originally living there because I was a foster child in quite a few homes in the Eastern Iowa, like Mississippi front. So yeah, that's where I grew up originally. So
How were your foster home? I was a foster home kid, group home foster home kid. It was not a good experience.
no, yeah, I unfortunately was another kiddo that had quite a rough upbringing and various issues in the foster care system. I actually was a failed adoption. When I was a teenager, I had to go back in the system. But if you want, I can kind of back it up to what led me to be placed into foster care and like
Sure.
discuss kind of the birth family situation. So my biological mother had me when she was just a week past her 18th birthday. She was heavily onto drugs. She met my father in a halfway house after he had done some juvenile prison time for various crimes, which later on it came out that he was dealing with quite a bit of sexual, physical abuse. And originally he's from Phoenix, but moved up to Iowa to live with some biological aunt and uncle. And that's where some of the extra abuse was occurring. So he was placed in a halfway house in my hometown where my biological mother met him. They were both very heavy into drugs. And then, they had me, and my entire first 2 to 3 years of life was, mom's in rehab, dad's leaving back for Phoenix, hopping on the train. Mom is in and out of alcohol and drug rehabs. Then she goes back and the state gives me back to her. And then the next thing you know, she's back in rehab. I'm back in a foster home. Biological grandma tries to step in, just different things like that. And then when I was about 4.5, I was adopted officially by a family. And that family, I was the youngest of 9 children. So they had everything from 2 of their own biological. We had some interracial siblings that were, some of them were related to each other. I had a brother with Down syndrome. I had another brother with autism. So you just dealt with various backgrounds and various upbringings. But then there was me, and that was turmoil basically my entire life from the earliest memories that I can basically access in my mind. So, I was living in that home for about 10 years, maybe a little bit more than that. And in that home, there was sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, denial of critical care. There was indecent contacts with minors. There was foster kids sexually abusing kids in the home. And it was very apparent that my adoptive parents cared a lot about their image, and taking all these kids in and kind of being the rescuer versus like getting us help with the backgrounds that we all came from and the traumas we brought forward and different things like that. I was essentially, there were multiple attempts to take some of the children under the age of 18 away from them. The DHS would step in, but they're involved with Special Olympics and they're in the community and they're all these things. So there was numerous times since I was like 5 years old where they would come in and they would kind of interview us, or I don't want to say interrogate, but question us essentially in the presence of the parents. And then it was like, we knew that physical beratings, beatings were going to come if we said anything. So it was always like denial of the truth and, just various things like that. So eventually One of my sisters in the foster or adoptive home, she went on a city bus to a county over and went into their Department of Human Services building, and she reported the attempted rape and sexual assault of our adoptive father on her and I.
Wow.
And they finally,
Did a real investigation?
did it. They finally came in. I was in the 9th grade. I got called out of biology class. Hey, we need you to come down to the office. I kind of already was like, uh-oh, my parents are probably here. This is not going to go well.
Yeah.
And when I get down there, it's an investigator and a cop. So a DHS investigator and a police officer. And so they're like, hey, we got to report that, various crimes and things had happened in your house. We know about a sexual assault. Give me your version of the story and such. There was too much correlation between our stories that it was finally going to be founded, basically.
Right.
So, we went back home, a couple days passed, and then one day after school, my adoptive mother was not home and my adoptive father was home, and it was just me and my sister and him again. And 3 patrol cars, a DHS worker get out. There's 3 or 4 cops at the front door, and we're upstairs nervous looking out the window. And, adoptive father yells up, hey, they're here for you. Come down. And that night we were taken out. I was just a month past my 15th birthday, and we ended up back in the foster care system, temporary placements. But I'm from a very small state, very small town, not a super established, great DHS system or child protective services. No foster homes really for teenagers to go to, because it gets such a bad rap of taking these teenagers in, and you think they're going to be, poor behaviors and bad trauma and all that kind of stuff. And obviously I did have some of that, but I was straight A student. I was responsible. I didn't drink. I didn't do drugs. I, went to school on time. I did everything I was supposed to do. And so it was really hard to kind of realize that there's nowhere for me to go. So I ended up in some residential treatment with family reunification being the goal, when we knew there's no family to reunify.
Right.
And then right around that time, I was basically advocating with my guardian ad litem to maybe go into an independent living house or situation. And right about that time, I didn't really know much about my birth family, but my birth mother reached out to me on a Facebook Messenger message saying hi, do you know who I am? And I was like, no, who are you? And she's like, I'm your mom. And I'm in the middle of this super separating, traumatic, only thing I've ever known kind of situation. And then now she's here inserting herself into what I was already trying to process, in a very difficult manner. And also
that age,
I'm
so
15,
confusing.
16 and puberty, reaching adulthood soon, and just so many kind of cataclysmic things going on in my life at the same time. So yeah, she kind of got involved and, kind of learned that I was being separated from my adoptive family, and then trying to establish some form of connection with her. But I learned very early on that some of the same reasons that
She's still a mess.
yes. Yeah. So basically, through that, you learn, oh, well, what other kids do you have? I've got 2 half sisters on that side. And then, do you know anything about my father? And she would tell me his name, but didn't really know where he was at the time. And so I started on a quest, and then I find my father in the Department of Corrections in Colorado, and I write him a letter. It's a 10-page letter front and back. And I'm like, here's my photo. Here's everything I can possibly think about myself. Maybe I'm not your daughter, but if I am, here's me. And he wrote me back. And it was my father in Canyon City, Colorado, in the Evans complex in the prison down there, which is actually an hour from where I live now.
Wow.
And then I started learning. I got 2 half brothers on my dad's side. And
What did he do? Do you know?
yeah, my dad. So some of those original crimes when he was younger, before I was even born. Apparently some sexual assaults and sexual abuse was going on in the home he was living in with his aunt, like forced rape and things like that. And he basically took a gun and shot up her house, and actually they charged my father with domestic terrorism for that at 16, 17 years old. And then there was some like drug charges and like assault charges. And then later down the road, there was some gang involvement, more drugs, more assaults. Something I did learn about my father and that kind of side of my family is that my dad's dad was Grandpa Rocky, is his name. I mean, his name's Rocky. And he passed away in Florence State Penitentiary in Arizona with Aryan Brotherhood involvement and just various things. I never met him once in my life. So I think my dad, there was some connections there and just various things out of survival. And
Unfortunately, that's all he knew.
yeah, my dad was reported. I have a lot of those criminal record reports and drug, rehab reports, and then what kind of happened when I was being put back in the system and things. I've got a whole list of various placements, rehabs, different things. And my dad was reported involved with the system at 9 years old doing drugs and alcohol and, experiencing crime and just various things.
So you have lots of generational trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I, started to become aware of where my biological family stemmed from and doing my own research. And I mean, even my great grandmother on my maternal side, her mother was pregnant and was murdered by my great great grandfather in front of my great grandmother in 1936. And there's crime reports on generations, just goes back 3, 4, 5 generations of murder and crime and gang involvement and drugs and, just various things like that. So it was almost like, here I am. My grandmother was an orphan back in the 1930s. And here I am in the modern day, like basically a modern day orphan back in the system with no legal family, no parents, no successful foster or adoptive homes. And yeah, even to this day, I still don't have any legal family. My friend that came here with me, she was identified when I deployed to Afghanistan, back in my 20s. She was identified as my next of kin in my will because I didn't have any other family potentially to leave anything to. So yeah.
There's no one to turn to.
Yeah.
All of those precious years.
Yeah. Those developmental years of, realizing there's like neglect and abandonment. And when you needed mental health care from different forms of abuse, no one ever paid attention to it.
Right.
And I was always performative and always achievement based. And, oh, look at these grades I got. And look what I drew you. And are you happy with me now? And what can I do to make you love me more? When in reality, you can't.
So that's how you become an overachiever.
Oh,
because
people
you're
pleaser.
Yep. And you're always like, look at me. I'm right here. Yep. Just like you said.
Yep. And there was
I've
always
been there, girl. It is not fun.
Yeah. Always growing up kind of, I have a lot of friends. I was good in school. I even played some sports here and there between various homes and things, but I never really felt like I belonged. I never felt worthy of good treatment or, people's love and attention. And like I said, somehow, basically an anomaly to a lot of those circumstances, I never got involved in crime. I never started drugs or alcohol. Like I said, I always felt like, well, I'm on the straight and narrow. Why does nobody love me? I
like it's never good enough.
I'm a prime, societal, citizen and things like that. And it still doesn't earn me anything, where I'm like comparing myself to people. I'm like, well, I know families that have people who have done drugs and things and they still love them and they still make efforts. And yeah, it was always such a confusion and kind of made me feel like I was an outsider to my own life and, various things like that. So I did end up in a independent living. I was very fast tracked. I moved to Waterloo, Iowa, which is 2.5, maybe 3 hours northwest of Clinton. After various kind of foster homes and remedial placements and things. And when I got there, I was starting my junior year of high school or kind of like the end of my sophomore year. They basically put you in like these room pod things where you kind of have to show them, you know, how to budget and you know how to work, you know, at the hometown grocery store to like earn a paycheck while the state is kind of paying your insurance and you're, you know, I was on SNAP benefits when I was a teenager because that was kind of one of the, you know, you're on Medicaid or Medicare, you know, various funding things that the state would try to do to alleviate your issues.
Right.
Yeah, so I ended up there, and within probably 4 or 5 months into my junior year of high school, I wound up getting my own apartment, and the state kind of funded it. But if you want a cell phone, if you want gas money, if you want to own a car, you got to do that for yourself. It was always like, we'll cover the absolute basics, but you got to do everything else. So yeah, I learned 16, 17 years old, 100% with like legal signature authority to sign my own parental slips at the high school that I have to do everything on my own. I've got to learn to advocate for myself. I have to start sticking my chest out and kind of not acting on the anger, but like letting that motivate me to like keep myself together. And you know, I knew from a young age that I had to stay away from the drugs, the alcohol, the, you know, promiscuous relationships or anything like that. You know, I had boyfriends here and there, but I was like, I cannot afford to have a child young. I cannot afford to get in trouble with the law. I'm already struggling enough to live.
Like the fact that you were able to process all that and actually think that way is a big deal. Like, God, this whole beginning of your story sounds so much, it's like exactly like mine.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Well,
yeah.
They say we all find each other for
it's crazy.
Something's for a reason.
And I can tell you, well, I did have a child at 18. Like the things I hear you saying, I'm like, damn, I wish I would have thought that way.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't there, you know, because I did independent living, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But wow, good for you.
Yeah. And it was like, I've kind of reflected as I've gotten older. It's like, was that out of fear? Was that out of, again, like, can't do anything that steps outside of a boundary that makes people have more reasons to abandon me or not like me or not love me. And then I was like, or is it just blatantly all of us are born with a different willpower? And, you know, even though I didn't know anything about them at that time, my birth parent, like maybe I got some of the better sides of them, even though they did all these horrible things. And had kind of, my dad had a lot harder upbringing than my mother, but she still had her struggles. She was diagnosed bipolar in her teenage years. My dad wasn't diagnosed bipolar till much later in his life when he was in and out of prison.
Is he still in?
Actually, no, he's on parole. He's still a DOC. I think he's phased out. I don't have a relationship with him. He is back on drugs. It's been kind of confirmed. And there's like cocaine, fentanyl, and just different things that I tried to establish relationships with him and even my mother. But they have such, you know, my mother's like entitled, like, I'm your mother. You came out of my body. Like, I am your mom. Don't call me by my first name.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, well, we should get to know each other. I'm a teenager. I'm almost an adult, you know. And then with my dad, somehow with him, I always kind of felt more like intellectually connected with him, even through the letters. And I think in ways it was hard, but in ways it was like I only got to know him through his writing. I didn't hear his voice until he recorded a little. So I was 16 or 17. He put a purple handprint inside of a book called On the Day You Were Born that he used as restitution earnings from like the prison kitchen, went into the prison library, and on a CD, I still have it. He read this on the day you were born, wrote a little message inside of the book, and then shipped me the book with sealed flowers over the handprint and then the CD inside. And I had to pop it in my laptop to hear my father's voice for the first time. So, and then that was really the only time in that period where he was still in prison like that I was able to kind of get that connection until much later when I was, you know, able to start calling him when he kind of was on parole and in a halfway house and stuff. But yeah, I didn't even know much about, like, I had to kind of research and establish, like, what are their names? What's their middle names? Where are they from? You know, what did he do? Why is he in prison? You know, what kind of drugs were they hooked on? I kind of had to like I said, that stranger to my own life, I had to kind of like start piecing things back together to learn who I was and like learn.
How did that make you feel though? Like when you know, like he's been in the system more than half his life, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And just a criminal. Did that give you like peace knowing who he is and like kind of where he came from and what he'd been through? Or did it make it harder? Like, oh, this is what my dad's doing.
Something that I have recognized in my now 30s is I have experienced a ton of paradoxical, like we call them like dichotomy experiences. Like, I'm so hurt and so like trying to find ways to accept, and like I said, oh, you'll get a couple of weeks of like, oh, he's trying to get sober, and then the next thing you know is like, oh, he's risking it all, he's back hooked on cocaine, or he's asking certain young people in my life to help provide fentanyl or
Oh, geez.
different things to him, or trying to hook him up with, and then, oh, he's back. It's the snapping back and forth of like, oh, there's hope. Okay, there's no hope. And then it's like,
Right.
and then just deeply rooted in who I am, I find myself to be a very empathetic person, or at least I try to have gainful understanding of people. So I always tried to give him like, well, your dad was a gang member. Your mom, my grandmother was 15 years old when she had my dad, and my dad and my uncle, his younger brother, are only 10 months apart.
Oh, wow.
So he was barely 4 weeks old when she got pregnant again. So she was barely 15, 16 with her first two kids. And granted, that was back in the 70s, but my grandfather was quite a bit older than her. So in the modern day, that's still like an abusive context.
Sure.
And I don't know that they all look at that, but I'm like looking at the facts and I'm like I said, it's been deeply ingrained in like my whole entire generational upbringing on both sides of the family. But yeah, with my dad, I always felt more of an internal, emotional, mental, kind of intellectual, like, oh, we think the same. He just used it for negative and process things negatively. But I have the same kind of willpower in the opposite direction. But like, there's still some form of like wavelength where we match almost. Whereas I developed almost like an empathy, sympathetic approach to my father because of the deeper layers of abuse that he endured. Whereas I still don't know everything, but I look at my mother's side and, she was diagnosed with bipolar really young, but she had her mom and dad. There was a divorce involved, and she grew up through eastern Iowa, northwestern Illinois, and like Milwaukee, Wisconsin areas. And she was very young when she had me, but like she had mental health struggles, but there was also like, in my opinion, of course, not as much trauma and struggle as like the blatant abuses and things that my father went through. So somehow as I processed, as I got older, I was more empathetic towards my father and more vengeful and angry at my mother. Because when I did discover them again later in life, my dad was always kind of like the self-deprecating, I don't deserve you. I've never done right by you. You're the mirror of goodness that shows me how terrible of a person I really am. He kind of like checks himself out. So we would kind of have a connection. We might be texting back and forth. We might, I flew out when I was 17 and when I was 19 to like try to bond with him, but he was deeply in a relationship with a woman right out of, the halfway house and stuff. She had her own, I think it was more alcohol-based struggles. Her and I did not get along on those trips because I'm like, this is the first time I've ever met my father. And you're like blowing up his phone and wanting to spend all this time with him when I'm clearly like, he's meeting his child for the first time.
Right.
And it just caused so much tension and things. But by the time I was 19, he was like, if you can't solve this with basically my stepmother, you can't come back kind of thing. So then I was like, okay. But between like 16 and 19, I'm going like back and forth with him. Like, oh, we're texting and hey dad. And he's leaving me a voicemail and he's kind of like, hey kid, hey baby girl, I'm checking in on you. And, wishing me a birthday 2 weeks late and just different various things, which again is like the wounded part of me. And it's like,
You would take anything that he would give you at that point.
Yes.
Just
but then
he's seeing you.
Next thing I know, the light switches off and 8 months pass and I don't hear a word. And then here he comes again. Hey, baby girl, I'm really sorry. Kind of
like out of nowhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was my problem where I somehow had to make a very hurting, out of hurt. I'm sorry. Out of hurt, I made the decision that it was more detrimental to my life to have him coming and going and coming and going after super deep-seated abandonment and neglect issues from him. He's just doing it again to me, just as a developing adult.
Yeah.
And so I basically cut it off, and he's attempted here and there, like every 3 years or something, to be like, Daddy misses you. And again, I don't feel the daddy and the baby girl conversations that like maybe a typical father would have with their daughter or son that they raised, you know? So just like my mother, I'm like, I don't feel mommy about you. I don't feel my mama. And like, you know, I might refer to them as mom so people understand the context, but I don't call them that.
Yeah. Well, they have to earn that.
Yeah. And I mean, and I didn't even, I kind of understood the structure of like, we kind of have to build a respect. We have to build a friendship. And then maybe someday it's so deeply, you know, newly embedded that I will feel that way. But I wasn't even like from an entitled place of like, you owe me,
right?
You know, like you have to earn this kind of thing. I was more of like, I hope that you'll let me become more comfortable with this. And
which is so fair to say.
Yeah. So like really, and even, you know, as I say, moving, I have to go back a little bit and discuss kind of how I aged out and what happened there. But basically, like I was saying, I flew out to him when I was 19, and then that whole thing kind of happened. And then it was like, you can't come back. So I was like, okay, fine. But I had basically just joined the Army at that point in time, and he was one of the only people I gave my address to, and he never wrote me. So I went through basic training. After what I'll say next is like, you know, the really difficult part of aging out and being, you learn that you don't actually break, even if you're not doing drugs and things like that, there's a lot of pain when you come from a lot of things we've come from that you still don't break the cycle on. And I have learned that the hard way as I've gotten older. But yeah, he's not really been in my life, and there's a lot of deep-seated sorrow about that with him. And with my mother, I'm kind of working through it in therapy now, but I have no interest in. If my dad could make it right, I would be like open arms of like, yes, come back into my life. I feel more connected to you. I feel like I understand you more, and I empathize with you more because you went through more of the trauma that I did. And I'm just not seeing that with my mother. And a lot of her behaviors are drug or mental health induced. And so I find, well, I have mental health problems and I don't treat people like that. And, you know, so it's, I just don't connect. I don't like looking like her. It's just very hard.
That's okay too. You don't have to connect.
Yeah.
You know?
And apparently, you know, I still, because of who I am inside, I'm like, that makes me feel guilty or, you know, various things like that. But yeah, to back it up, I was in a relationship when I moved to Waterloo to get into the independent living, moving out of my apartment. I started dating a guy from that high school. And originally we spent a lot of time at his house where he lived with his parents. And I had no signs of like any abusive context at the time because he was still in high school and like it just wasn't quite there. But then as I was a junior going into my senior year, he was graduating and he joined the Army. And he went infantry down in Fort Benning, Georgia, and his mom was not very happy about that and kind of always lived in the shadow of his older brother, who ended up having some heart conditions after being basically recruited by the Atlanta Braves to play baseball. But he got sick, moved back home, lived in the basement, and his mom was always maybe more focused on the older brother. And so, like I said, he kind of fell off in the shadows. But then when he would make big decisions, his mom would be like, kind of almost like controlling by use of her emotions and her anger to keep him tied to what she wanted him to do. But he ended up going the Army. We were still together. And then he got orders to Germany. So that really set his mother off. And then, of course, we were in a relationship. I don't have a family. What am I going to do when I turn 18? So I graduated early. Right at 17, and 2 months later turned 18. We got married by Justice of the Peace through like Kalispell, Montana. They would do like he was in Germany, I was in the States still in Iowa, and we signed the documents. Then we were married, and then I moved over to Germany, and I think the pressures of his mother kind of like being angry and disconnect. Oh, now you're joining the army. Now you're stationed overseas. I won't be able to see. And then you're marrying this girl, which we knew her. I knew her, but
Right.
like, there comes all the real feelings about everything. And, you know, the pressures of the army and being young. And now you're allowed to drink in the military at 18 in Germany. That became a very physically abusive relationship. And within the first year of me living over there, he was arrested. He was thrown in the barracks for 10 days. He was charged with, you know, domestic violence. He had to go to anger management and different various things like that. And what did I do? I tried to make it work, and I tried to, you know, mend it and don't leave me and that kind of thing. And then we came home for this like real wedding, or kind of like ceremonial celebration with his family, but mom still wasn't happy about it.
Did she know about the domestic violence and everything that was going on?
Nobody really knew about that, but it became apparent when we were doing like the rehearsal stuff the night before. He got violent with me out in like a snowbank because his brother was really drunk, and I was trying to get his brother to stop, and he got kind of violent and pushing me around because he didn't want me getting involved with his brother and things like that. So people were like, you know, side-eyeing like, what? And that trip was, after that leave and that holiday experience of coming home, he went back to Germany because he had, you know, the military timeline. That was when I stayed back in Iowa to kind of visit my friends and family at the time, and go out to Grand Junction, Colorado to visit my father for the second time. That was when I was, 19. At the time, the church that I kind of grew up in, it was a Baptist church down the road from my adoptive home. And I had a youth pastor that I was very close to, very much respected. He learned about the domestic violence kind of situation. It kind of all came out, and he basically sat me down and was like, God is telling me that you cannot go back to Germany. You need to stay away from this man. All you're doing is repeating, you know, the patterns of your childhood. And at the time, I'm registering this as coming from a place of love or like care for my well-being. And so I stayed home. I never went back, and I filed for divorce. And I told him over the phone, like, I'm not coming back, but we're going to have to figure out a way to get some of my things back. Of course, he was angry, and he's like, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Gets told to do that. Yeah. Then I moved in with the pastor and his wife and his 2 children that I also knew because I kind of babysat them through the years. Moved in. He offered me, because I was going through a divorce, he offered me a purity ring. And with this purity ring, you know, it was, while you live in my house, you cannot go on dates, you cannot have sex, you cannot do anything that you are still in the covenant of marriage, even though you're going through a divorce. And I'm like, yes, okay. Well, I lived there, kind of got, you know, hooked back up with, you know, an ex-boyfriend, and something kind of unfolded. And then it was like, he kind of caught me hanging out, and then it was like belligerent anger of like, you broke the promise, you need to give me the ring back, you're gonna have to find, you know, somewhere else to live, you can't stay here. But I was like, okay, well, can I have some time to find somewhere to live? And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, we had talked like, you know, forgiveness and various things like that. And then next thing I know, he came back in the house one day, and he's like, you got to go. You have to get out of my house. And I'm like, why? And he didn't explain. He just said, you need to leave. So at the time, I kind of had like a pseudo grandma that, you know, I cared about, and she knew my biological grandma. And so when my biological grandmother had passed away, right when I was getting to know my mother and things, I hadn't mentioned that, but she died on my 17th birthday. Her best friend of like 35 plus years kind of like scooped me up under her wing and was like, hey, come around for Thanksgiving. And, you know, we kind of build a bond, and I refer to her as grandma, so I don't have to explain it to everybody.
Right.
Well, she came and helped me move out of his house, put me up on the farmhouse up in her attic while they were moving into a home in town because they were reaching kind of the retirement age and wanted to get that all planned. And that was when I lived out there. There was nobody in that farmhouse. I just lived in the attic by myself. Now there was power and water and all that stuff. And it was kind of out of a, we don't know what else to do because we're not fully established at this new house yet. And that was when I kind of packed up my car and I kind of was in communication with my old adoptive sister that also had got the one that went to the other DHS and reported the whole thing. And she was dating a guy or married to a guy in the military and was pregnant with her son. And so I moved down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky or Tennessee. I was living with her. I got a job. I had my car. And
she was doing well?
Mostly. Her husband deployed to Iraq at the time with the 101st Airborne Division out of Fort Campbell. But something I didn't mention, I didn't go into detail on, was a lot of my adoptive siblings were involved in drugs or self-harming. She was one that was very self-harming. She was kind of bulimic. She very much struggled with mental health. She was not very defensive of herself. I was always more, she was 3 years older than me, but I was always more of the protector of her. And so, I was like, okay, let's take a new shot at our relationship. I'll move down. I'll help you with the kid while he's deployed, kind of get out of my head out of Iowa and out of all that craziness, because the day I left to go down to Tennessee, the pastor's wife asked me to meet her at a Village Inn. And so I went in there, we sat down, got coffee, ordered breakfast, and she said, the reason that he came in so abruptly and asked you to leave the house is because he was told by the devil to consummate some form of intimacy with you.
What?
And he was arguing or having like the good bad on his shoulders, and he was going to go inside or go out into the trunk of his bedroom, grab guns, and like threaten me to leave. But he was like wrestling the good and bad in his mind. So when that was occurring, I'm like looking at her like, I've known him since I was 11 years old. Like, what do you mean I'm barely just over 18, 19 at this time. Hadn't even joined the army yet.
The fact that he even told her that too. That's just...
Well, and the thing about him was later on down the road, after I had already left town, he basically opened like a church in my hometown movie theater. He got up in front of like the congregation and had announced that he was sleeping with prostitutes and had a porn addiction, like to his wife in front of all these people. But she was so like faithful and believed in marriage and no divorce. Like that's kind of
like stand by your man.
Yeah.
Kinda,
like people can get into that, and I mean, in whatever way, shape or form, abusive relationships or that really strong religious presence or things like that, people like don't step away from things we perceive that they should,
Right.
So anyway, she told me all of that and I was like, yep, I'm out. Like,
Thank
and
God
that
you got
also
out.
ruined all of my perception on the church. And that was when I started to question God and question, what was I even going there for? Was that just to feel like I was connected to more people while I was being abused at home?
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, I shut that all. I mean, even to this day, I struggle. I shut that all down. I won't step inside of a church. I feel like I have a lot of fear of what kind of like, I don't want to say evil presence, but like what manipulative presence could live inside of a church that would do things like that to children or to, people that pretend to care and things. So I moved down to Tennessee, got a job, eventually decided to join the military. Also one step back, my sister that had reported all of the crimes and things like that, the one that I'm referencing that is going to Tennessee because the husband's deployed and stuff. We were teenagers before the homeless shelters and things like that. We went into a foster home with another family that had like done all the classes and stuff and let us move into their house and they promised they were going to adopt us. They promised like all this stuff. And we would go to these youth events, and it was like the group's support systems for foster children. You may know what those are.
Yeah.
Like Lutheran services or church would step in and like get all these foster parents together to support the kids and learn who you could do transient living with if you went on vacation and stuff. And my sister had kind of a friend her age that also went to our school that needed a home but didn't have anywhere to go. And I was experiencing some anger, and I was experiencing, but again, I was going to school, I was doing by right. Me and my sister were arguing a lot because, again, I look back and I think like, well, one, we're kids, one, we're siblings. Number 2, 3, 4, like we went through a lot and we don't know how to process it. Now we're in these new homes and we're like in a new environment with new rules and just how do we chameleon in here so we fit in and don't get in any trouble.
So much constant change.
Yeah.
And not being able to trust anyone.
Yeah. Fast adaptation to different environments and people and expectations. So we were arguing a lot, and like that, from my memory, that's all that was kind of going on in the house. Homecoming comes by. I'm about to go to the dance. I'm coming home from school. I go inside. Nobody's home. Foster mom, foster dad, their 2 kids, and my sister are not home. And I'm like, hey, guys, I'm texting like, hey, guys, my dance is tonight, or the football game's tonight, whatever. Where are you guys at? Like, I need to start getting ready and whatnot. They never answered. And the next thing I know, the doorbell rings. I open the door. It's a cop and a DHS worker. And I was like, did something bad happen, And it was like, no, you need to come with us. You can't follow the rules and behave in this house. You can't live here. I mean, I had never even been pulled in, never been counseled, or like nothing had been aware to me that like
there was an issue.
They were like done with me kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I knew that like the arguing and stuff kind of got on their nerves and things, but like aside from that, it was like felt kind of normal,
Yeah.
Yeah, and to kind of transcend on that story there, another form of trauma, I went to a homeless shelter. That was where even more of the flashing back and forth between foster homes, remedials, homeless shelters. I was actually locked in a homeless shelter, no idea what was going on. That was the only snippet of information I had was you can't behave, you can't live here. Nobody would answer the phone. I couldn't call nobody. They took my cell phone. And this is the crazy part that I tell everybody. I'm like, it was like a metal door. They shut it. You could bolt it from the outside. And there was like little windows in the top. And I'm like, am I in a prison cell? There's a metal frame bed with like a mattress on the top of it. It was dark, and like they would open it and be like, okay, you can come out to the common areas. Like it was basically like restraining you from being a runaway. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what I'm doing in here. Like,
no one's giving you answers.
No, nothing. My DHS worker hasn't come by to see me yet. It was probably 72.
Worthless.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Well, yeah. And they didn't come by for like, it was like 72 to 36, 96 hours to be like, hey, they reported that you were violent with your sister and that you were truant from school and that you weren't following the rules and like you were being aggressive and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, I kind of have like a type A personality and like I'm more outspoken than a lot of people, but like, yeah, I could be kind of abrasive at times. And I was a developing teenager back then. Like
Right.
I even still can kind of be that way, but I'm like, again, I wasn't like assaulting people and like beating kids up at school or anything.
Right.
So I was just like so taken back by this discovery of like, well, nobody mentioned that or told me to correct my behavior or like gave me help to even like help me process any of what was going on.
You had to be going crazy during that time when you didn't know anything. I can't even imagine the things that were going through your head. Like,
so
what the hell did I do?
Yeah, well, I can ask you like, again, we've related on some of our story, but it's like, that like when traumatic things happen to you, it's like the sucker punch in your stomach and you wake up the next day and you're like, this can't be real. And then you open your eyes, you're like, oh my gosh.
Shit, this is real.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Still happening. Yeah.
It's like that twingy feeling in your elbows and knees and you're like, yeah, it's like filth from the inside and it's like the hopelessness that takes over you.
It's so deep.
Yeah.
Like deep within yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they say. Like people go into shock when trauma happens and like that's probably a defense mechanism of your brain.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I was so young and like trying to figure all this out. Well,
But now you're being treated like a prisoner. Like
Yeah.
I remember having, I had to go to like an institutional type group home too, where it was boys and then girls on two separate sides, and it was like the metal beds and two in each room, and
you had to share rooms.
you
with
had
the
to ask to like take a shower, ask to take whatever, and
Yep.
oh god, I
time
just
limits, feeding times.
and I didn't do anything. There were just no foster homes that I could go to.
Yep.
So I'm like placed in there.
What state are you from?
Ohio.
Oh, yep. Okay.
Yeah.
That Midwestern, like smaller,
Oh yeah.
populous areas. Just a lot.
And the things that happen in there. Oh, God.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tragic system for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, basically to move forward on that, the foster parents, they kept my sister, and the next thing I know, I'm starting to finally get like, not from them directly, but from the DHS worker, like some forms of communication. And, oh, Lindsay gets moved into the house. The other foster family that foster child I was talking about was my sister's friend at school.
Oh.
So she moves into the house, and, then I don't hear anything else. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, that's weird. That's weird. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Do you think your sister manipulated that?
I think the parent, well,
With them,
you'll hear
with
here in
them.
a second that,
Oh.
foreshadowing again forward that I know why they did it. And I know it was all fabricated and exaggerated and manipulated to get me out of the house, because by structure, they didn't have any rooms or bedding for more than 2 teenagers. Well, the foster father and Lindsay were having a sexual relationship. She was 17 years old at the time, moved into the house. Eventually, Tammy, the foster mother, walks in and discovers that it's occurring. And she has to get like medical help and like goes crazy and oh my gosh, and what are you doing? And what did you do? Because that's why I said like it was basically even more that the foster father was influencing the entire, we need this to happen because Kyleigh's being, awful in our house. And they got my sister. It's almost like they manipulated her too. And then it was like backwards manipulation of like, yeah, you're right. She's mean to me. Move the other girl into the house.
Well, she's already obviously, has a lot of damage from past things herself. And then
She wanted
have the
the
foster
home.
dad manipulating the shit out of her, I'm sure.
Yeah. And like I said, but at the time I was enraged at her. Like,
course.
you just abandoned me too, and like
Yes.
lied, and you did, and I'm wanting to call her out on it, and can't even have that communication, like I'm in trouble or something. And yeah, like I said, fast forward, foreshadow on top of plenty of other things. Lindsay, the foster that was in the house, and they were having that relationship. They got married, and they have 3 kids together, and they recently just split. Yeah. So the foster mom and foster father got divorced. They had the 2 kids together, so they're kind of co-parenting. And as she crossed 18, they got married and they had kids. And also that whole structure that my sister thought she was going to keep together, it all crumbled. Right. And they kind of have just really weird relation, kind of like dropped her off on her own and like maybe occasionally communicate and stuff. But it's like,
How did you find out?
Small town.
So people were talking.
Eventually, like I said, I kind of was like, my sister reached out to me. Was like, I'm sorry I did this. Like, I'm sorry I let you down. This is kind of what happened. And like, she kind of confirmed and added more details to my knowledge and things like that. And
But how do you ever trust her again?
Yeah. I'm very withdrawn from any communication with her, but like deep down inside, I'm like, I feel sad. Like
that's my
I
sister.
grew up with her.
That's my girl. Yeah.
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 I used to get in fights at school when people were picking on her and stuff. Like, yeah, it's just like in our abusive adoptive home, it's like we were the only thing that could like escape from the reality, and like we shared a room and stuff. So yeah, it was hard. It's still hard, she still reaches out occasionally and things, but it's very superficial. But at the time, back when I was 19 and I had moved from Iowa down, she was the one I was like, okay, I'm going to move down. I'm going to help you while your husband's deployed, help you with the baby. He was ended up being born preemie, and I lived down there. I helped, and then I was like working, and then like I don't know where the idea overcame me, but it was like, I'm gonna join the National Guard, like the Tennessee Army National Guard. And so I went in, talked to recruiters, did all these things, and I joined. And on New Year's Eve of 2013 and 2014, I left for basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and went to basic and AIT. I went to AIT in Virginia. I had, chosen a MOS of logistics, and then I came back to the Fort Campbell area, and that was in May of 2014. And then the next thing I know, I had no knowledge of anything. There was no letters, no phone calls, no confirmation, but she had packed up and moved out of the home on Fort Campbell, and my stuff was already in storage because I deployed to Afghanistan and they lived in military housing. So it was kind of like, hey, let's put it to the side in case we might have to move in town or move to a different house or whatever's going on. Mm-hmm. And I came back and it was like weird, like mail notices on the door, and she was nowhere. Like again. And I said, well, that's what solidifies
totally
the abandonment. And like, now it's like, now I want nothing to do with you.
Right.
Yeah. And then, I joined the Army, and June of 2014, I reported out to Paris, Tennessee, to my first National Guard unit, which is where I met my friend that came with me here.
Okay.
And I was just a 19-year-old, or I guess I was 20 at the time. But yeah, I joined the military in the Tennessee Army National Guard. I was still working a full-time job back in Tennessee. I was, we went to Bulgaria together. We went to Guatemala. We helped rebuild a school after the earthquake in 2016. We went over and helped build military base called Novosello in Bulgaria, like 2-3 summers in a row. I was doing all sorts of stuff in the National Guard. And then I got a job opportunity to work with some people I had met at this. I was 20, 21 years old in the National Guard working for Service King Collision Repair as they were doing acquisitions all over the country. And I got selected to be like the traveling front office trainer in our like management system. You get a rental car, You go to steak dinners, like things I had never had. Right. And I'm going to Colorado, and I'm going to Texas. I'm going to San Jose, California. I'm up in Seattle, Washington. I'm in Park City, Utah. I'm out in the Carolinas. I'm in Florida and Nashville, and with a rental car, going to see things, like stepping out of Iowa, stepping out of just, that little experience in Tennessee, and
actually experiencing life a little.
Yeah. And like I said, in the middle, there's like Guatemala and Bulgaria and like overseas. Now I've been out of the country, and my worldview expanded, and I fell in love with traveling and things like that. But eventually the company kind of stopped traveling after a few years. And then I got this job offer with a pay raise down in San Antonio, Texas. And it was someone I had met on those acquisition trips. So I moved down and started working out there. I got interstate transferred to a unit in Tyler, Texas, which is east of Dallas. But I lived in San Antonio, which is 6 hours away. So I was working this job. I kind of picked up another job at Lifetime Fitness, working with kids in the gym so I could get a free membership. I was working as a bartender on the weekends at like a TGI Fridays next to a Six Flags. I was like, man, I finally got my life together. Like, I have all these experiences. I'm hustling. I got multiple jobs. I'm still going through college at this time, full-time online. And then by the time I was like 22, 23, I was like burning myself out. And the couple that owned the business down in San Antonio, the husband and wife were in the same building fighting all day, every day. And I was like triggered. I was like, I cannot work in this environment.
Yeah.
So I quit and thought I was doing the best thing for myself. I lived in a loft apartment like 20 minutes away from that building. And I thought, okay, for right now, I can work at TGI Fridays. I can work at the gym, maybe pick up extra hours, and then look for something else. Mm-hmm. But my National Guard annual training was coming up at Fort Hood. So I was like, oh, well, I'll get paid from that eventually, but I can't find something right this second. I got to wait till I get back. And people are understanding of the military, but it's hard to like get hired for a job and be like, oh, I can't start for 5 weeks kind of thing.
Right.
And then like the Thursday before I left for annual training, I go in for my shift at TGI Fridays, and there is a closure sign on the door. TGI Fridays has been bought out by Cheddar's or whatever it was.
Oh, God.
You can pick up your last paycheck next Friday. We are sorry for the inconvenience.
No notice.
No notice to
nothing.
anyone. I mean, I had friends that worked there. There was no notice to anybody. So now all I've got is the part-time job. Go to annual training. And then, like I said, I can't get a job. So I'm like coming back from annual training. But at this time, when all this is going on, I had dropped the conditional release to active duty and was kind of just waiting on their decision-making process, which took forever. So at this time, everything's up in the air. I have no idea if I'm going active duty anytime soon. So we went to annual training. We did all this stuff. But at the time, I couldn't keep my loft apartment. Like I was getting the threats of like eviction and things like that. So for a couple of months, my friend out here sent me $1,000 and some workout equipment. I was sleeping in my car. I was showering in the Lifetime Fitness and sleeping in my car in their parking lot while I was in the National Guard, too afraid to tell anybody. And then I ended up finally telling somebody, and they kind of had me move up towards the Tyler area, and I was staying with one of the NCOs in like a spare bedroom. And so, that was just another brief stint of homelessness, but it was like I was too ashamed and embarrassed, humiliated to tell anybody that. So yeah, I moved up kind of in that area, and then Hurricane Harvey came through in 2017. And so I left the annual training at Fort Hood. Here I am again, can't go get a job because, hey, we're going to be the first units down in the Houston area for this hurricane that's projected to be catastrophic in this area. So we move down, we go to the Ford Arena in Beaumont, Texas. Next thing I know, we're kind of out on these day missions as the flooding and the rain's coming in. And, we were there a couple days ahead of time before the storm even hit to give people like evacuation notices and stuff. There's a lot of people in those like southern areas and things that, nope, I've lived here. I've had hurricane exposure my whole life. Nothing, it can't be that bad. I'm not leaving. Well, we were out on a team with like an LMTV and a dump truck. We were over off in some kind of neighborhood or like sublet city of like Beaumont and Houston, and the highway collapses. The flooding hit so high that all the overpasses leading back to Beaumont everything collapsed and there was no way back. Like it was like 40 miles away. So it's like, you can't fly boat over there. And like, so we ended up basically housing up with Lumberton, Texas Fire Department, going out with them doing search and rescue in this hurricane. We got photos of, we rescued puppies and dogs and squirrels, and we were picking kids up out of the water, getting people off the roof. Unfortunately, there was like multiple experiences of like the cops going in and kind of in the areas we were in, and like some of the people had refused to leave, and then they trip on, as things rise in their house, they trip and they can't get to higher ground and they pass away. And like, just another kind of like crazy, like, yeah, you join the military and you know that you could be exposed to that stuff, but it's kind of like, it's kind of like the whole theory of like, you don't really realize how much traumatic things affect you until like down the road.
Sure.
So we did all that, and then next thing I know, Hurricane Harvey's kind of wrapping up, and we're doing like food donations and having people come through as like the floodwaters are going down. Now there's the destruction. We're doing cleanup stuff now, and my conditional release to active duty got approved, and that was life changing at the time, because I'm like, I went from having no idea I was going to pay for housing, no idea where I was going to go, where I was going to work, to, hey, now after Hurricane Harvey, you're going to go down to San Antonio, in process at MEPS, and you're off to wherever needs of the Army are going to send you. And that all happened. And on September 28th, 2017, I reported to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri as like active duty permanent party in that area, went to a engineer unit, and deployed to Afghanistan 53 days later.
Oh.
Yep. So I went on deployment to Afghanistan with multiple platoons doing IED searches. They were sappers in the Army, and like some horizontal engineers and things. And I'm the supply sergeant of this. Like, I'm supplying, inventorying, turning in the vehicles and anything that gets destroyed in like a blow up incident or anything like
Are you
that.
petrified, like going there?
No,
No. Okay.
not originally. I think when you're surrounded by people like that, it's one of those more combat MOSs. It's a very male dominated. You match it. You match the energy of like,
Right.
I gotta be tough. I have to have walls. I have to be defensive of myself. I have to, there was only like 3 females in the whole unit of like 145 males.
Oh, wow.
But they were spread out over multiple environments, different platoons sweeping
Right.
different areas and things. So I would travel by aircraft with my commander going to multiple places. And like, I wasn't really fearful of much until we had some hits over there that, injured. We actually never had KIA or killed in action in my unit, but the surrounding units, it became real of like, this could be these guys at any point in time, and we care about these guys. You build this thing, and kind of some people you don't like, but at the end of the day, you do anything for them, and
They're still your
some people are your best friends, and like different things like that. So yeah, it's just like, I guess fear per se never really like settled in, but it was more like vigilance and like
Right.
being on alert and being like ready. Because very like guys in different platoons, depending on where I was, it was like, this place is more dangerous than this place. This one you're probably more safe at, and like so it was like guard up, guard down, guard up.
Yeah.
And on this deployment, I worked a lot. I was losing sleep. I was losing weight. I say losing sleep because I was working extremely long days. We had numerous millions of dollars of equipment. Guys were getting hit, and equipment was getting destroyed, and you had to make sure they were getting what they needed. And we had mail going to 5 different platoon locations. We had new uniforms and various supplies and things going. It was a lot of coordinating and traveling and moving all this stuff. And I would work very early days to very long nights with almost no days off, period, the whole 10 and a half months that I was there. Wow. So I was equally like exhausted and like hindsight, I guess, traumatized from the experience, but I was also very grateful for it because it was kind of coming into the time where like things were still dangerous, but kind of settling down in the war in Afghanistan. Because we ended up withdrawing in like 21, 22, and I was over there in 2018. But yeah, I didn't realize in the moment how much that experience changed me or developed me into who I would kind of become, even as a professional, perspective. It strengthened me as a person, but I think it also kind of like broke me down mentally in a lot of ways. And when I got home from deployment, I was basically on. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I kind of went on like a suicide watch for a short period of time. And they were like, we don't know if it's hormonal. We don't know if it's just mental trauma, or like maybe the environment was so overwhelming, but because you've been kind of like traumatized your whole life, you didn't recognize it per se. Yeah. So we really couldn't figure it out much, but I was no medicine. I'm not doing that. I don't want pills. I don't want, because my mom's a benzodiazepine addict, and she got bipolar disorder, and I was like, I was trying to avoid any of that. No addiction. I don't want any of that. So, I got back to working out and doing everything I could to kind of take care of my body, and it got better to an extent. Still never really talked to anybody about how it was, because mental health in the military is a taboo, and like it's getting maybe a little better, but you have the suicide epidemic. You have the leaders who believe that like military is suffering, and back in my day they were beating us with switches, and nowadays you guys are so soft, and and as generations change in the military, politics changes, and so it affects all these things. Right. And so I still was like kind of silently struggling with that, on top of like again like just childhood, and like how I kind of just head dived right into adulthood after how I had grown up, still kind of had really nobody. Like I've had some really close friends, but like, you know, when I lived in South Texas, they were 28 hours away up in, you know, Tennessee or Iowa, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's still hard to not feel lonely and sad and depressed and things
Sure.
like that. So, but I realized quickly that I was like basically thriving on active duty. Like I was like, oh, I never could really find myself missing people as a child. So now you have this transient living in the military. You're here, you're there, you're going on trips, you're coming back, you're leaving people behind. And like, I was like, heck yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm mending this. I mesh with all of this. This is good for me.
And you were constantly busy, I'm
Yeah.
sure, because
Oh, yeah.
all the stuff you were doing.
Yep. My job is busy. Like I excel again, back to the achievement, and I'm competent and I'm autonomous, and people are earning my trust, and I'm very reliable and they depend on me, and I'm building training and I'm training soldiers. And yeah, it was life changing. Like
Right.
as I developed on active duty, I had my hard moment. Everybody does, but I loved it. I respected it. I was like, I have benefits that I never had in my life. You know, I'm getting eye surgery to get implantable contact lenses provided to me after suffering with, you know, really bad vision my whole life. I started getting allergy shots from suffering with,
Oh, God. And if you were in the system, you never got the right treatment.
yeah. Like I said,
yeah.
the adoptive family is denial of critical care. It was, they actually got charged with those charges.
They did?
Yeah. Neglect, denial of critical care,
Wow.
physical abuse, indecent contact with a minor for like the attempted rape and
Good.
a lot of that stuff. So, and some of the denial of critical care was like, you knew your children were being molested in this house, and, you know, obviously you're part of the mental abuse, but they came out of traumatic infancy and like early developmental, and you brought them in this house and never got them, after you adopted them, the system kind of left you alone, and then you never got them treatment or mental health or,
Right.
you know, cognitive skill training or anything. So yeah, the Army was like my saving grace almost. Like I felt like I had a purpose, kind of felt like I belonged. It was like almost like, you know, they refer to it as a brotherhood, and like it's like, oh, you get some camaraderie, and like I said, you have your challenges and things, but like I never like felt a sense of purpose in my childhood. Like I never felt like I belonged in a family. And yeah, so I came home from deployment, got promoted to sergeant. Things were going well. I picked back up in college online.
So this was how many years ago?
I got home from deployment right before my 24th birthday.
Okay.
And
I just wanted to reference where
yeah,
we're at. Exactly.
something
Okay.
else to note, from really the age of 19, when I was getting divorced, 20 years old, I finally got a divorce. I didn't date. I didn't hook up. I didn't date. I didn't let anyone in. I didn't, kind of just stayed on the straight and narrow.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, but like you said,
Yeah.
stayed busy,
Yep.
invested in my education, like still earning that, like, let me be a good citizen, let me do right by the military, you know, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Let me enact good values of, you know, and I grew up in the Midwest just like you did. And I'm from Iowa, like I said. And even though I had such tragic upbringing, like, you know, you're still surrounded by the environment of like the upbringing, and the Midwest is, I still believe it has great values, and it's a hard work ethic,
agree.
you know, because you have all the farming and agriculture and things like that. Education is prominent in the Midwest. You know, you get sports are very, because you don't have a lot going on in those kind of small towns in those cities. So that's,
Right.
you stick to those basics. So yeah, I was just head down, you know, straightforward on focusing on these things. And like I said, no dating, no nothing. Well, when I was kind of in Afghanistan coming home, I kind of started dating for the first time again. But what I realized, this guy was a little bit older than me. He's like 7 years older than me at the time. So 24, he's like 30, 31. It was not an abusive per se relationship, but people around me, close friends, that pseudo grandma I had, people were like, he kind of patronized me and like, oh, we're going on a hike. You have cargo pants on. I drove. Can you hold the car keys? Nope. If you wanted me to hold the car keys, you should have wore pants with pockets. Like, oh, you're going to check the mail in sandals in the winter? Like, that's wild. Like, you know, just, but again, at the time I was like, he's doing that out of care to like teach me a lesson. And I didn't realize until much later that was like, huh, you know, again, I don't want to go and like label that as abusive, but there was like questionable things. And then towards the end of our relationship and what kind of, I don't want to say the end because I did the back and forth thing of like feeling guilty for leaving, he got a vasectomy behind my back and tried to hide it from me. And then he had been picked up from the hospital after lying to me about where he was that week, saying he was like in some army training for the whole week so he couldn't see me, when really he was recovering from a vasectomy, knowing how I feel about, you know, future children and like how I've never really held and touched my own flesh and blood. And like, I value the thought of like having my own child someday and like holding them to my chest. And like, you know, I never really got to
like
be nurtured by,
you didn't get.
my mother and father never held me in their hand. I mean, you know, maybe in the infancy somewhat. But I'm going to throw it back a second to my birth mother. As you read these records on my birth mother, leaving me at home with strange men as an 18-month-old, sitting on top of my body, smothering me with a pillow. Grandma walks in on it and basically saves her from taking my life while she's, drugged out on meth. And she confesses to this when she takes me back into DHS to be like, I can't take care of her anymore. She's like, I'm leaving her at home. She's like, I can't remember if I put meth in her bottle. Like, again, like, and it all got founded. She also has physical neglect. Like, she would confess to, I had these men in the house after her dad left me for Phoenix on this train, and I would have strange men like in the house that I was messing with. And then I walked down the street to go get cigarettes, and I'd leave my baby at home. And of course, like, you know, I don't have memories of being 18 months old, but it still impacts us as people. So I very much cherish the idea of like, I would never smother my child. I would never walk into DHS and hand them back. And like, you know, I would never not know if I put drugs in their bottles and leave them sucking on empty bottles around strange people and, you know, various things like that. So yeah, he gets this vasectomy, and then a soldier that I really loved and cared about and respected, he called that soldier to come pick him up from the hospital to take him back to his room. Well, that soldier eventually was like, I can't keep this secret any longer. Like, I feel guilty because I really care about, you know, this NCO, which is myself. And he told me, and that night, my now ex-boyfriend had come over, and I'm kind of making dinner, and he's standing there, and I'm going, oh, well, you know, when I heard it on the phone, I had this like kind of like mental snap of like, this man wanted me to move out west and like live on a ranch. And, you know, like, what were you going to do? Like, basically make me think I can't have children my whole life and not have any full or gainful understanding of what the truth was. So like I said, I wouldn't say it's like blatantly abusive, but like that's
maybe not physically,
sure,
but definitely mentally,
like a control thing. It's like, I did this because I wanted to, but I'm not going to tell you so I can keep you right where I want you, kind of thing. So yeah, for months and months and months, I struggled with like, okay, you're right, it was your body. Because he even did that to me. He's like, I'm a man, and men in society don't get to have control over their bodies. It's always like focused on women's autonomy and all that kind of stuff. So he's reverse psychologying me about men versus women and various things. And I was like, oh, I respect that. I understand your perspective. And yeah, so back and forth and back and forth. And then the things started coming out about, oh, happy birthday. I know your parents didn't want you, but I'm glad you're alive. And then it was me like not reminiscing, but like the day I was taken out by the police.
What an asshole. Like, who would say that?
And again, at the time, I'm like, I'd say something and be like, why are you taking that so negative? You think everything's so negative, you know? And I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, again, okay, here's the people pleasing and all right, I guess, you know, let me stop the way I feel about it and focus in on what you feel about it. Right. And so, yeah, so that was my birthday's in January, mid-January. And then the anniversary of me being taken away from my adoptive home when the cops all came, the DHS worker, that was February 24th, 2009. And I am probably trauma-induced or whatever. I remember everything. Like, some people forget with trauma, and other people hyper-focus.
Right.
They dial in on the details. You don't forget timestamps. You don't forget how long it's been. You remember precisely the day, the time, the what house I was in, what the room looked like. Some people, like I said, like they're opposite sides of the spectrum. And I just happen to be on the side that like hyper focuses on every little minor detail of everything. And then that comes out in the way I also like love people and care about people and nurture relationships of like, I couldn't possibly, I'll remember everybody's birthday. I'll remember everybody's favorite color. I will remember everything special. And then also hoping that maybe they would remember that about me.
Because you're still, all the abuse and all the trauma, you're still wanting to be seen. So you just keep thinking, oh, I'm going to get it right.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it right. Oh,
Yeah.
so sad. Yeah.
Eventually, when that occurred, I don't know what it was about that. And he came to me and was like, I don't know why you focus on this. You're always in a reminiscing place. You can't let go of the fact that you had so much childhood trauma, but you're not the only person in life that has that going on. And like, yeah, yours is bad, but like, you got to get rid of it and let it go at some point. And like, couldn't tell you what snapped in me at that point, but I was like, come get your stuff when you get back from West Virginia on this army training. Like, we're done. Like,
good for you.
So back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And even sometimes it's kind of like, we're not done. What do you mean? Like, so again, probably more like mental control things, but like back and forth. And then one day it was like, okay, nope, I've reached the limit. But then a couple of months later or a couple of weeks later, I run into a guy that I had also deployed to Afghanistan with that I hadn't really seen in like a year or so, maybe a little more than a year. And I'm walking into the old unit to do something for them with some property stuff. He's walking out about to go to drill sergeant school. And it was like, oh my gosh, hey. And like, oh, whatever. And then like later on, I get a Facebook message like, hey, it was good to see you. You should come over and hang out with me sometime. And at the time, like, yeah, up to that point in my 20s, I hadn't really dated or aside from this guy that like, even he was kind of secretive about the relationship, wouldn't post it on Facebook. It was like, again, like I said, I look back and I'm like, yeah, it was kind of more controlling and patronizing than I had even understood.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, fine. Like, I've never been the one to jump from this or that. And I mean, 1 to 2 months isn't crazy, but it's like, I'll see what's up. So me and my now ex-husband started hanging out and started dating. And in the beginning, it's lustrous and it's, explosive and, the honeymoon thing. And within 3 to 4 months, he's like, you should move in. I love you. We're like spending time with our friends at the Lake of the Ozarks. We're, having an occasional night of drinking here and there. And it's like, I would recognize, but there was no issue back then because it was like, oh, it's summer. We're on a boat. He's getting really belligerent and drunk. That's okay because we're like, at that point, I had never really had any, like, I was not a heavy drinker. I only more like oh yeah, brunch. Oh yeah, a football game. Like I'm a very social kind of structured drinker, I guess. And so
Which
yeah,
is perfectly fine.
Yeah. I'm not sober per se, but I'm not like, I don't drink every day or every night or every weekend. It's like maybe once every 3 months kind of thing. Well, it was becoming like we would go out and have drinks like every weekend. But I was realizing like I have to stay sober because he's getting really drunk and then who's going to drive back and kind of putting these weird predicament. But at the time, I love him and I care about him and that's okay. He's just having fun. And, he lost his vape at a swim up bar we went to and he's like ready to fight some guy in the bathroom because he swears this guy stole the vape. And I'm like, no, I think you dropped it like on the way in. You didn't have it coming into the pool. Like, I don't think it was in the bathroom that you dropped it. That guy can't be responsible. And then what do I do? The next day after that trip and he's super angry. He's like, now I'm withdrawing from the nicotine, this and this and this.
Why didn't you just go get another vape?
Well,
I made it that bad.
I did. I'm the one that I've never smoked in my life, walks into a vape shop and buys him this vape and cartridge or whatever and like comes home and I'm like, here, take it. Like you don't have to be, because here I am trying to manage the environment of like, if I manage his emotions, there's no anger involved. And then he'll be like, oh, he'll love that I went out and did this thing. And also a note, my grandmother died when I said she died on my 17th birthday. She died from stage 4 lung cancer. And my adoptive mother, when I was a child, she smoked in the kitchen, like in our house. And I have asthma. So it was like, all these things are, is like, I remember being sick, and I remember it stinking, and I remember it being so bad on my chest, and just obviously trauma association with the smell and things like that. And then I had also made the health choice of like, because of my asthma and because of my childhood, I'm not ever going to do that. So when I met him, he was more of a like, oh, I smoke when I drink kind of thing. And I've heard that all over the place. Like, but I was like,
Sure.
could you not do that? Oh yeah. You know, for us to be together, how about I switch to vape? It's not as strong. Doesn't smell the same. I still get my nicotine, but you don't get the like crazy triggered memories of whatever. That's going to come up important in the future. But at the time, like I said, I'm people pleasing. I'm going to get the vape. I'm doing all of these things, and I'm not recognizing that there's a problem. And then his sister comes to visit 3-4 months in, and she opens his phone when he's really drunk to like take a selfie of us and post it on the story. And the next thing we know, there's like 6 girls. If you were dating someone, you could have just said that. Like, and then like the first outburst happens the next morning when I'm like, why were there girls saying that you guys were together for 6 months when you broke up with your ex-girlfriend like 3 to 4 months ago, and now I'm moving in and you love me? 6 months doesn't make sense, because if you were dating for 6 months, you didn't even have a 4-month break between your last girlfriend and me. So where was this 6 months at?
He
Like,
just got busted.
yeah, but it's like, what did he do? How dare you go through my phone? I don't care if my sister opened my phone. How dare you break my privacy? Like, so here it is, like the very first thing that was like, you see something with your own 2 eyes, and I'm either going to turn it around on you and make it your fault, or I'm going to tell you that's not what happened, and you're not seeing what you saw.
Right.
And he's like, 6 months is a lie. I was only with her for 6 weeks. I would go down to the Arkansas and go on dates with her, and then I was like, well, she said you guys were hooking up and all this. And he's like, no, that's not true. You know, everything. And at the time, what am I doing?
Everybody else is crazy. Everybody else is lying.
Yep.
Yeah.
But so at the time, I'm like, well, he must be telling me the truth. He's telling me he loves me and wants me to move in. And yeah, so then, you know, he's a drill sergeant. He's at work long hours of the day. I move in. I'm starting to bring my stuff over, kind of like organizing the room, the house. And I'm going through some boxes and kind of moving stuff around, thinking, again, I'm doing like an act of service. And like I open this box and it's like 50 pictures of different girls that he had like dated or went to high school with or had a fling with or hooked up with, and because I kind of had gotten some of the stories from him and stuff. I'm like, that's childhood best friend that wrote him a love note in 8th grade now. And I'm reading this note and I'm like, that's not a very friendship based conversation or whatever. And I just thought it was weird. I'm like, why are you piling up? Like, yeah, if they went to prom with you, it's like you might still have a photo of it, but it's like,
Right.
these are just like random parties and random like selfies and things of these girls in this shoebox thing. And then the next thing I know, I'm kind of clearing out under the bed, and there's, to be kind of blatant, there's like a sex doll that's kind of like a full size, and it's like ripped up. Like, I was mortified. I was basically I had been sexually abused as a child. I was pretty conservative, even like I said, no hookups, wasn't dating around.
Right.
I was more of like, we have to have chemistry together before I get intimate with people. So I'm seeing this and I'm like, what am I looking at? And again, I'm trying to address it when he comes home, and I'm like, can I throw that away? Like, I'm like, you know, because at the time it was
under the bed?
I'm ignorant to it. I'm like, it was under the bed, wrapped in like a towel, but it was on his side. And I'm like, we've been together for a really long time. Like, why is that so close to where you access it? And like, you know, like I said, here I am bewildered, but I'm also ignorant because I'm like, is it inherently bad? No, but it was like so shocking to my eyes. I'm like, and why is it all like ripped up and this and that? And I'm like, again, I'm not registering that like there's something wrong with him. I'm registering there's something wrong with me, and I'm just really uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, that's a boundary for me, and I don't want to be exposed to that stuff.
Yeah.
Foreshadows, you know. So I throw it away, but he's mad at me. And he's like, I've had these things since before we got together, and I don't just have to throw the pictures and stuff away. And, you know, so this is where I kind of was like, yeah, you do. Like, yeah, you do. I just moved into your house. Like, you have this odd collection of things that's almost like kind of obsessive and strange. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable being in this house with these things. So yeah, then it's like do whatever you want, whatever makes you feel better about it kind of thing. And then it's like, you're not going to come in here and start like controlling things. And again, I didn't really feel, I could see the perspective, and I was like, I didn't feel like I was controlling things per se.
Right.
I was trying to set boundaries, I guess, is what it felt like. Again, perspectives might maybe look at that like, oh yeah, maybe that was a little controlling, but I think it was very fear-based boundaries on my part.
Yeah, but you also come from a place of a long history of trauma and stuff, and he's supposed to love you and
care
everything
about
else.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and maybe like some more like upfront confrontation of like, hey, this is why I have it. This is where I was before we met.
Right.
Like, are you comfortable with it? Like, maybe, some more
like,
forward.
I understand where you're coming from. If he would have just told you, like,
Right.
but not acknowledging your feelings or,
comfortable.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, kind of moving forward, we're both Army. About 10 and a half months in, we ended up getting married at the courthouse. And at first it was like he was all in, he was all this, he was all that. And we get married at Lake of the Ozarks at a friend's house. The friend's house is going to become very important later down the road here. But we get married. Lake of the Ozarks, they kind of set something up on the back deck. Beautiful view. We did it kind of quietly. I had one maid of honor, one witness. He had one person. And then we had our officiant. And then like the wife that was kind of like setting up the cupcakes and things like that. Mm-hmm. But he had to drink the morning of the wedding. Like, not that people don't drink on the morning of their wedding, but it was like, he was like nervous and he didn't know if he could say vows because he was so nervous. And I was like, you don't strike me as someone who's like super nervous to kind of be yourself. Maybe a couple of drinks would have been fine, but it was like, he was like tipsy when.
And nervous to speak. I mean, if he's a drill sergeant.
Nervous to speak, but there's like 3 people right here.
Yeah.
And you know all of us. So then that night, we're kind of celebrating down in the basement. There's a hot tub. There's all these things. And I'm laying on the couch kind of like, oh my gosh, we got married. And the conversation is like, yeah, it's crazy. We knew each other from Afghanistan and this and that. And he's like, I remember the time that I was attracted to Sergeant so-and-so. And I couldn't do anything with her because she got 3 kids and a husband. And then we had a female lieutenant in our unit that was a lesbian. And he's like, but man, when we were in Afghanistan, everything looked good. Like,
wait, this is what he's talking about on your wedding.
On the night of my wedding. And I'm like, okay, I've had a couple drinks too. Like, maybe your inhibitions go down. Here I am making excuses in my head. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know why we have to talk about that. Kind of get up. Go over to my best friend. I'm like, let's just sing karaoke and kind of let the night go. And by this stage, the intimacy was slowly like, I didn't notice the pattern, but it was slowly starting to die. Where it was really explosive in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Started to, which again, I'm like, oh, honeymoon phase, it's gonna wean off. Yeah. It's normal, right? Googling, is this normal? Like,
right.
Yeah. Google doctor of like, am I crazy? Or
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, fast forward, about 6 months into our marriage, from what I kind of remember, aside from some of the drinking stuff, like it was a pretty neutral 6 months. Like we did things, his birthday was 4 days before mine. Now that is something that also stuck out to me, was like I would go lavish on his birthday and surprise him with things of like thought and caring, of like reaching out to people he knew from deployments in the Army and write him a birthday card and send a picture in. And he got me a treadmill for my birthday. And at the time, again, I'm like, why do I need this? And he's like starting to slowly comment on my appearance and slowly starting to comment on my weight gain. And
oh yeah, his love bombing was all done.
But the crazy part was I wasn't like gaining any weight though. Like comparatively to how I am now.
He just wanted you to be self-conscious about it.
Right. So I'm like, oh wow, what a surprise. For my birthday, I get a treadmill. Like, thanks. Like, I also really like my master's degree is in Master of Sciences in Health and Wellness Promotion, public health. I was like, oh, it kind of buys into my interests and stuff. I like to go to the gym.
You were finding excuses for him.
Yep. And fast forward to May of 2021. This is where, again, I'm going to foreshadow real quick the story I started to begin to put out about our relationship on social media, where I started to blow up on social media and you kind of discovered me and asked me to come in and be a guest. This is where this is all leading to. So May of 2021, I had a really good friend back in Iowa that also had kind of struggled with alcohol and drugs, but I was always like that big sister friend presence that like helped her walk through it. We kind of had a fallout because I was kind of sick of the back and forth when I went to Afghanistan, and then she found out she was pregnant, reached out to me and was like, you're the only genuine person that's ever been in my life. Like, please let us rekindle our friendship. And then we had like the best 18 months of our friendship we had ever had in 10 years. And it really genuinely seemed like, for the most part, she was sober. She was cleaning it up. She had her baby. Things were going well. So I'm like, we're 6 months in. She's never met my husband. She's never been to my place in Missouri where I'm stationed. And so I flew her I flew her from Iowa down to Missouri for a weekend out at Lake of the Ozarks at my friend's big lake house where we got married. And when she got to my house, she meets my ex-husband. And within like the first couple of hours of her being there, she was staying in the spare bedroom. So the spare bedroom is here. There's a bathroom right here. And then my master bedroom's over here. Well, she's over here. He's in the shower. And he kind of comes out in a towel to walk into our master bedroom. And obviously, he didn't know she was kind of like standing in the doorway talking because he had his music playing on his phone. And she's standing there and she's like, whoa, I did not expect to see that. Like kind of, and here I go in my brain. I'm like, well, that was weird. Like get a kind of queasy feeling in my stomach. And I'm like, well, I mean, he does live here. I mean, like, he's my husband. Like, I didn't think it would be, you know, sometimes you kind of run into someone and that you just kind of like, you acknowledge it and then you move. Like, you don't even have to outwardly acknowledge something. You can just kind of like, oop, and like turn your head or
let alone
avoid
acknowledge it in that way.
Yeah, because it's not purposeful at that point in time. So anyway, we pack everything up. He goes up in his car. I go up in my car with her. We go up to the lake house. Day kind of gets started early. Music's jamming. We're all in our swimsuits. We're heading down to the boat dock. Friends meeting friends. Husband's hanging out. Things are going good. It's like noon on this day. We get to these swim up bars. We're drinking on the boat. All these things are, and I'm kind of drinking on the boat too. So I'm like, oh man, I can let loose, whatever. And we get down to this swim up bar. They have to like park your boat at and like come out on this beach. And like by then we're sitting down to have lunch and like you can tell my friend that I flew down from Iowa is like reaching that beyond already by like 3 p.m, reaching that point of like oblivion drunkenness, stumbling around, slurring her words, weird emotional, you know, stuff that you do when you're drunk. And then there's like a spot you're not supposed to climb on. And what does she do anyway? She climbs up this kind of like ladder on this tree and like falls down, cuts her leg open on this picnic bench thing. And now I'm getting like frazzled because I'm like, here we go. Here I go having to babysit. At the same time, I'm like, now my other friends are getting drunk. Well, he drove the boat. I don't know how to drive a boat. This is getting weird. My husband at the time is getting drunk. I'm like, so what do? Can I have a water, please? I stopped drinking because I'm like, now I feel like I have to babysit this one. And like this whole weird thing is unfolding. And I'm getting more sober as they're getting more drunk. Now, I had probably only had 2 or 3 drinks. Because again, I'm not like a get drunk person per se. So by the time the evening is kind of like starting to set in and we kind of are like, okay, we're getting too drunk. We got to get back to the house. Now we'll kick this party up back at the house type thing. We get on the boat and she's also, by the way, she's in front of my husband and my friend's other husband or whatever. She's, oops, had a malfunction on my swimsuit. Oops, just kind of doing frivolous behaviors,
too much,
uncomfortable behaviors. And I'm like trying to tell her, like, knock it off. And like I said, I'm getting frazzled. I'm getting irritated. And so we get back on the boat. She's kind of yelling about, like, I can't find my debit card. Does anyone know where my And I'm like, you just cashed out your tab. Go back and check the go back and check the counter for the debit card. So my other friend goes with her. They're both stumbling drunk. She comes back to me, doesn't have her debit card. And she grabs this wristlet off of, I had a black wallet with on my wristlet, and it's where I kept my ID and my little thing. She yanks it off of my wrist and she opens it up and she's like sifting through it. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I know you have it. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, look in there.
She's just getting stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the next thing I know, now mind you, I'm on the edge of like next thing I know, she's taking this wristlet and she goes to like hand it back to me. But the strap that goes on your wrist, she like yeets it forward at me. Or kind of whips it forward at me, and it hits me in my left eye. And I hate to say it, I like stand up and I'm like, okay, this is enough. I've had enough of your behavior. Sit down on this boat. We're done. Like, you're going to have to call and report a lost card. I'm not sitting here all day waiting for you to stumble around and find your card. You might have dropped it in the sand for all we know. Right. And so I'm angry, and she starts crying. So my husband gets on the boat and he's drunk. And the next thing I know, he's like, why are you being a bitch to your friend? And I'm like, what? Like, being what? I'm like, she's being wild. And he's like, no, she's not. And I was like, well, you're drunk too.
And he's saying this in front of her too?
In front of everybody. And I'm like, okay. So we kind of get in a verbal like argument, whatever, about it. And she's wailing, like crying. So my other friend's like on one side. My husband sits down next to her and kind of puts his arm around her, and she's like leaning into him like, I don't know what I did to deserve this. Like, why is she being so mean to... It's the drunk crying and like going off thing. And I'm looking at him like, come here. Like, we're going to go sit at the front of the boat. I'm not doing this. And he's like, you're not telling me, so here he goes getting verbally aggressive. So I was like, whatever. I went and sat in the front of the boat, and they were hugging the whole time. And like, he's like, I don't know why she did this. I want to, like, I hear him kind of mention like, I want a divorce. Like, this is crazy behavior and she's being a bitch. And so we get back, they go to they go to like tie up the boat on the dock. I get out. I don't help. I get out, grab my stuff, and I hitchhike it up to the house, which is like maybe half a mile up the road. And I get in my car, and I'm like angry, and I put music on, and I get in my car, and I'm like, it's going to take them a minute to like do the boat tie up and like get back in the car and drive back here. So I went down to a Hy-Vee to grab, which is like a grocery store in the Midwest. And I went down there to grab like a water and like kind of like try to calm myself down. And when I get back, they're kind of like pulling into the driveway, and I parked my car kind of out on the outskirts, or like I had pulled it around and like faced it out. Cause that's important. Like I had faced the car like out, like you could drive out of the,
like towards the road.
Yeah. Like backed into it kind of thing. And the next thing I know, I'm like, hey, come over here. Hey, come over here. And he like comes over and he whips the door up, and he's like, I want a divorce. This is awful. Why would you fly someone down from Iowa and treat her so badly? I'm embarrassed to be seen with you. Berating me.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just like, what? Like, divorce? Here goes my abandonment wound. Like, what do you mean? You like? He's like, I can't stand you. You're just all these terrible things. So I go around. They kind of have like a driveway that goes up and then down and around. Kind of goes into there's a garage up here, and then there's like a secondary garage pull-up spot down at the bottom. So I kind of go to the bottom. It's like next to the hot tub room and like the whole walkout basement thing. And I go down there, and I'm sitting there, and now I'm crying, and I'm like, what in the heck? I'm kind of going like super hyper emotional and like, what does this mean? And what does he mean by that? And my other friend that owns the house comes out.
Now all you hear is, I'm going to be abandoned again. You're leaving.
Yep.
You're not sticking around. Yes.
Yep. And so the next thing I know, my other friend who owns the house comes out, she's like trying to calm me down and be like, he's just drunk. He doesn't mean it. We're all drunk. I'm sorry. Da 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 da. And the next thing I know, they're all inside, like the rest of them, the two husbands and her, the friend who's really drunk. And the next thing I know, the husband of that also owns the house comes out and he's like, you're right. She's crazy. She stripped all her clothes off in the kitchen. You need to tell her to stop. And then the wife goes, no, I'm going to go in and take care of it. Like, this is too high strung of a situation. They just got in an altercation on the boat. Like, just stay out here and sit with her. So she goes inside, and my other friend who's really drunk is like grinding sexually on my husband in the kitchen. And he's going like this, like, my hands ain't on her type thing. And
oh my God.
Of course, she's coming back to tell me this. And I'm not seeing it with my own two eyes at this point. So she takes her, grabs all her stuff out of the spare bedroom we were going to stay in, and she takes her all the way down. There's like kind of like a man cave office, and they kind of have like a futon or like it's like a pull-out bed thing. So she puts her to bed down there, and to her knowledge, she's like passed out asleep in this bed. And that bedroom is like, you got to go through the living room, come out the sunroom that's like that hot tub room, and then you could find us right there on that corner. So she comes back out, husband goes back inside, and like 10 minutes pass, we're just chit-chatting, we're talking about it. She's like, hey, she's downstairs, they're drunk. Again, trying to excuse the behavior and be like, just calm down kind of thing. And the next thing I know, her husband comes back outside through that sunroom by the hot tub, and he goes, you're right, she's trying to get everybody to F her. Like, you need to go inside and see it for yourself.
He's telling you this?
Telling me, yes. And I'm going, see what for myself? And he's like, just go in there, go through the living room, turn right, and go in the door.
Oh, God.
So I do. And I open the door, and her and my husband are engaging in sexual activity and naked and obviously drunk and sloppy, and like he's on top of her, and I open the door and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you know, clearly yelling and like going crazy. And he gets up naked from the waist down and he pushes me out of the room. He's like, get out of here. Again, what? I'm like, what is happening? And she's like topless and naked from, or like pants are all discombobulated. And I like went over there and attacked her. It was like pure rage. Like, I basically beat her up. She didn't do much. And at that point, after he had pushed me out of the room and he sees that I got past him and went in there and was fighting with her, I don't know where he went. He goes somewhere, like upstairs, which his suitcase was upstairs, something. And he went upstairs to try to get pants or something like that. And
I can't believe you didn't beat him too.
Well, that's where the story is going to turn sour this way. Not on my part. Well, I guess on my part, but not. It goes in a direction I could have never envisioned. And
it gets worse.
Oh, it does.
Oh my God.
Yep. So, and this is kind of where like I said, I kind of started in this area when I started putting everything out on social media. So he goes upstairs. At the time, we had a dog together, which I have the dog now. He's a 5-year-old golden doodle. He's the love of my life. He was a puppy at the time. Like, he was like 10 months old at the time. And golden doodles are big dogs. And by the time he's 10 months old, he's not full grown, but he's up there. He's definitely in like the 65-pound range. He's very tall and, you know, kind of awkward and uncoordinated and all that kind of stuff. So he's
the
in
only
his kennel.
guy you need now.
Yeah. So on the other side, in a different office, he's upstairs in the kennel.
Okay.
I like immediately make the decision that we are leaving this, and we're leaving her there. And so I'm telling him we're leaving, and he's like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, again, here goes a verbal altercation. He's like, I'm not effing going with you. I don't want to be seen with you. I can't be with you. He's yelling at my friends in the background going, I can't see myself with her in 5 years. This is absolutely insane. So I go in thinking like, I'm just going to grab the dog and get in my car and leave. because I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. This
Right.
is like beyond my wildest dreams of like anything I thought I would ever see.
Just remove yourself.
Yeah, my best friend and my husband just hooked up sexually, like very, very explicitly. And I walked in and now I just assaulted somebody and I need to get before anything else goes crazy,
Right.
I need to go. Yeah, so I get the dog, I get him out and I fold up the kennel and I kind of have him by his collar and I'm like, you know, he kind of follows anyway. So I was like grabbing that and grabbing my little bag and I was like, all right, whatever, then we're going. And at the moment, he's like, he doesn't say anything. He's like, you know, well, he kind of is like, do whatever you want. But he's not resistant at first.
Mm-hmm.
So I get out the door, walk towards the car. Again, mind you, the car is facing out the driveway. I'm approaching the left side of the car. I put the bag in the kennel in the back seat. And the dog gets in the front seat with me. Because at this point, I'm also like very emotional and I'm like crying and can't, you know, I'm just trying to kind of frazzle and get my stuff in there. And as I kind of get him in there and I sit him down and I kind of get my seatbelt on and turn the car on, the next thing I know, I didn't see it coming, but I'm facing this way in the driver's seat. Sorry, now it's I say it's the left side, but it was the right side of the car facing the house.
Okay.
It rips open and he's like violently reaching in, trying to grab the dog. And he's like, you're not effing taking my dog. And I'm like, this all happens very quickly and it's very explosive and erupting and it's like very violent and it's dark outside. It's like 2 a.m. at this point. And the dog is trying to come over the center console into my lap to get away from him. I mean, he at this point had like heard him yelling a lot in our house, but never like super physically saw a whole lot.
Right.
So he's like trying to get over. And now he's like wedged up in my lap.
Oh, he's scared.
Yeah, but under like, not even under it, but like he's over the shaft of like, he was in my way. And the only thing I could think to do as the door flung open was like, do my best to like so I had my foot on the brake. It was in drive, so you could still open the doors.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, all I could do was like get under the dog and slam that car in a park. Because I'm like, if it moves, I'm going to be dragging this man who's like outside the door of the car and half of his body's in and half of his body is out.
Right.
Well, when it stops, you know how like you stop, you slam forward and then you kind of slam backward. Well, the door was wide open. So when it slammed backward, his shins are up against the running board of the car and it swings really hard backwards and shuts on his legs. And the next thing I know, again, I'm frazzled. I'm looking and like trying to handle the whole thing. He grabs the dog by like the neck, the collar, and like the back of his skin on his spine. And he yanks him out of my car and chucks him. I mean, like, I hate to say this, it's like the Hulk smash. Like, he grabs this 60-pound dog and, like, throws him directly behind him, and there's, like, a tree there. And all I see is, like, his back is to me. The dog goes, like, flying through the air and, like, smacks this tree and then kind of falls down and runs. And I'm like, oh, my God. And he immediately turns around and he comes right back in that car and he is beating the literal shit out of me. Punches, scratches, slaps, pulling my hair, pulling on my clothes, punching me in the face, in the eye, in the neck, in the body, like everything.
Where was everybody?
Inside. The
Still
girl,
inside.
I mean, I at this point, I don't know because I beat her up downstairs or whatever in this basement bedroom. At the time, to my knowledge, she never came back upstairs while I was still like upstairs and we were yelling back and forth at each other. Well, the two were so drunk, I have no idea where I'm a presumptuous that they went back and like went into their room and were like, oh my God, what's going on? And like probably trying to be like, we're drunk, we're decompressing, let them handle their own thing.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, he's violently assaulting me. And I'm like, I don't, like, I can't drive away or I'm going to hurt him. Like, I have to get out and try to run back in this house or do something.
Right.
And this driveway is super long. So I was like, it's in the woods. I can't like I don't know where to go. So I eventually, I mean, probably a minute or so of him punching in the face. I mean, everything. And then I take the seatbelt off and I open the door. I get out of the car and my decision making is I'm going to go back around the car, shut that door and run into the house, try to run past him because he's still kind of like lodged up in the car.
Yeah.
I'm not fast enough. So I go around the car. By the time I get to the back right tail light, he's out of the car and he swings around and he gets me in like a rear naked chokehold. And I mean, he's only like 5'11" and I'm 5'7", but he was like leaning back. I mean, he was strangling me like from behind to the point that I'm like seeing black, seeing stars, like seconds away from like passing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, and at first you're like scratching, you're pulling, you're trying to get the hand off that's kind of like securing it down. And I mean, he's still just, I'm still punching, just grabbing, like trying to scream, but you kind of lose like the ability to do anything. And I could just feel that like, I'm going to go under basically.
Yeah.
And the next, I don't know what got, because like at this point I said, I'm not screaming anymore. And I'm still kind of like doing this. And he just lets go, drops me right on the ground. And he walks right, like nothing. I mean, it was just like drops me and then says nothing and walks straight back in the house. And as he's walking, he says, if my mother hurt me, I would kill her too. So I was like, he just tried to kill me.
Okay, guys. So we're going to wrap up now. This will be part 1. And next we're going to do part 2 of her story.